In ancient times, in the fertile land of Bethlehem, lived a woman named Naomi. She was married to Elimelech, a man of integrity and hard-working heart. Together, they built a life based on faith and the community of Israel. They had 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, who grew up under the watchful eyes of their parents, learning the teachings and traditions of their homeland. But life does not always follow the plan we set. A great famine struck the land of Judah, the region where Bethlehem is located. The harvests failed, food became scarce, and hope began to fade from families who depended on the land to survive. Faced with this crisis, Naomi made a difficult and courageous decision. She decided to leave in search of sustenance for her family. With a heavy heart, Naomi and her family set out for Moab, a neighboring land but foreign in the eyes of the Israelites. Moab was known for its hospitality but also for its cultural and religious differences. Naomi, Elimelech, and their 2 sons embarked on this uncertain journey, leaving behind everything they knew, their homes, friendships, and the safety of their homeland. The journey to Moab was long and arduous. They crossed hot deserts and steep mountains, facing dangers and uncertainties with each step. The group arrived at a small Moabite village, where they were received with a mixture of curiosity and reserve. Despite the difficulties, Naomi and her family managed to settle, thanks to Elimelech's resilience and hard work. In the land of Moab, Naomi found a new home but also faced unexpected challenges. Elimelech, already weary from the hardships, fell ill and passed away, leaving Naomi a widow in a foreign land. The sorrow deepened when her 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, also succumbed to illness, leaving Naomi alone, without sustenance and hope. The loss of her family marked the beginning of one of the most difficult phases in Naomi's life. Without Elimelech and her sons, she found herself helpless in a land that, despite being hospitable, did not offer the warmth of a familiar home. Sadness enveloped her like a constant shadow, and Naomi began to question the purpose of her journey to Moab. Determined not to succumb to despair, Naomi decided to return to Bethlehem, her homeland. With a heavy heart, she set off back to Israel, this time accompanied by her daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth. The return journey was equally challenging, but Naomi kept hope alive to start anew, even though the scars of loss were deep. Upon arriving in Bethlehem, Naomi was greeted by the community with compassion and solidarity. Despite her mourning, she found strength in the familiarity of her land and the support of those around her. It was in this environment of renewal that Ruth's story would begin to unfold, bringing a light of hope after the darkness of suffering. If you are feeling motivated and inspired by this content, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more videos like this. We will bring a series of content with biblical teachings and inspiring stories that motivate us to continue and not give up. Let's continue with the story. In Moab, Naomi and her family began to build a new life. Her sons, Mahlon and Chilion, grew up and married Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth. The daughters-in-law were dedicated and cared for Naomi with affection, bringing joy to her heart. Although they were in a foreign land, the family found comfort in each other, and hope blossomed again. However, life reserved unexpected challenges. Elimelech, Naomi's husband, suddenly fell ill. Naomi did everything she could to help him, but the illness was relentless, and Elimelech passed away. The loss of her life partner was a painful blow. Naomi felt her world collapse but sought strength in her sons and daughters-in-law to continue. Not long after, tragedy struck again. Mahlon and Chilion also became seriously ill. Naomi, already shaken by the loss of her husband, devoted herself entirely to caring for her sons, hoping they would recover. Orpah and Ruth were always by their side, offering support and prayers. However, despite all efforts and supplications, both sons succumbed to the illness. Now, Naomi was completely devastated. In a short time, she had lost her husband and her 2 sons. She felt alone and vulnerable in a land that was not her own, without sustenance and without family to support her. The daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth, were her only comfort in that moment of deep sadness. Faced with so much loss, Naomi decided that the best option was to return to Bethlehem, her homeland. Perhaps there she would find some relatives who could help her or, at least, be among her people. With a heavy heart, she called Orpah and Ruth for a sincere conversation. "My daughters," Naomi said softly, "you have been wonderful to me. But now, I have nothing more to offer you. Return to your mother's homes. May the Lord be kind to you, just as you have been to me and to those who have left. May you find new families and be happy again." Orpah and Ruth were moved and cried, insisting on accompanying Naomi. However, she continued, "Daughters, go back. Why would you come with me? I have no other sons for you to marry. I am too old to have a husband. Even if I could have hope and marry tonight and have children, would you wait until they grew up? No, my daughters. Life has been very bitter for me." After much reflection, Orpah agreed with Naomi. With tears in her eyes, she hugged her mother-in-law and said goodbye, returning to her family in Moab. It was a painful farewell, but Naomi understood that Orpah needed to move forward. Ruth, however, did not move. Naomi looked at her and said, "See, your sister-in-law is returning to her people and her gods. Go with her." But Ruth replied with determination, "Do not urge me to leave you or turn away from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." Faced with such a demonstration of loyalty and love, Naomi realized she could not dissuade Ruth. With a mixed feeling of gratitude and emotion, she accepted Ruth's accompaniment. Together, they began to prepare for the long journey back to Bethlehem. The journey would be arduous. The roads were dangerous, and the difficulties would be many. But Ruth's presence brought a ray of hope to Naomi's heart. Even amidst pain and loss, she was not entirely alone. Ruth, with her courage and dedication, would be a faithful companion in this new stage of their lives. As they walked the dusty paths leading to Bethlehem, Naomi and Ruth shared stories and memories. Ruth spoke about her experiences in Moab, and Naomi talked about her childhood in Bethlehem, describing the barley fields and green hills. These conversations helped alleviate the sadness and strengthen the bonds between them. With each step, Naomi reflected on the mysteries of life and divine providence. Even without fully understanding God's plans, she began to realize that Ruth's faithfulness was a precious gift. Perhaps, through this joint journey, something good could emerge from the tragedies they had faced. As they approached Bethlehem, Naomi felt a mix of anxiety and nostalgia. How would she be received after so many years? Would people remember her? And how would they react to seeing Ruth, a Moabite, by her side? Many questions crossed her mind, but she knew she had to face the future with courage. On the dusty road leading back to Bethlehem, Naomi walked with heavy steps, her heart burdened with the losses she had endured. Beside her, her two daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth, followed silently, sharing their mother-in-law's pain. They had traveled a long way together, united by hardships and love for family. At a certain point in the journey, Naomi stopped and turned to the young women. With tearful eyes, she said, "My dear daughters, return to your mother's homes. May the Lord be kind to you, just as you have been to me and my sons. May you find new husbands and rebuild your lives." Orpah and Ruth looked at each other, surprised and saddened by the request. They cried and protested, "No. We will go with you to your people." However, Naomi insisted, "Return, my daughters. Why would you come with me? I have no more sons for you to marry. Even if I could have hope and marry tonight and have children, would you wait until they grew up? No, my daughters. The hand of the Lord has turned against me." After reflecting on Naomi's words, Orpah saw the wisdom in her mother-in-law's advice. With a heavy heart, she hugged Naomi, shedding tears of farewell. "You will always be like a mother to me," Orpah said. Then she turned and began the journey back to Moab, her homeland, where she could start her life anew with her family. Ruth, however, remained steadfast by Naomi's side. Seeing this, Naomi said, "See, your sister-in-law is returning to her people and her gods. Go with her." But Ruth looked into Naomi's eyes and with a determined voice replied, "Do not urge me to leave you or turn away from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." These words, filled with love and loyalty, deeply touched Naomi's heart. She realized that Ruth was not just a daughter-in-law but a true daughter in spirit. Ruth's determination to stay by her side, despite the uncertainties and challenges they might face, was an act of unparalleled courage and devotion. Ruth was willing to leave behind everything she knew, her land, her family, her traditions, and even the gods her people worshipped. She chose to embrace a new life in Bethlehem, among a foreign people, and adopt the God of Israel as her own God. This decision was not simple. It involved significant risks and sacrifices. But Ruth was moved by a deep sense of commitment and love for Naomi. Naomi, understanding that Ruth would not change her mind, accepted her companionship. Together, they resumed their walk toward Bethlehem. As they traversed mountainous landscapes and deep valleys, facing the scorching sun by day and the cold by night, Ruth demonstrated strength and courage. She helped Naomi through the toughest parts, offered words of encouragement, and shared stories to alleviate the journey's fatigue. During the trip, Ruth also sought to learn about the traditions and faith of the people of Israel. She asked Naomi questions about customs, festivals, and the teachings of the God of Israel. Naomi, in turn, felt rejuvenated by sharing her knowledge and seeing Ruth's genuine interest in embracing this new faith. With each step, the bond between them grew stronger. Naomi began to realize that despite all the pain she had experienced, Ruth's loyalty was a sign of hope and renewal. Perhaps, she thought, God still had plans for their lives. When they finally spotted the hill surrounding Bethlehem, Naomi felt a mix of relief and apprehension. It had been many years since she left that land, and she did not know how she would be received. But with Ruth by her side, she felt more confident to face the future. As they entered the city, people looked at them with curiosity. Some recognized Naomi and whispered among themselves, "Is that Naomi?" Sensing the gazes, she said, "Do not call me Naomi, which means pleasant, but Mara, which means bitter, for the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I came full, but the Lord has brought me back empty." Despite the bitterness she still carried, Naomi was not alone. Ruth remained by her side, ready to face the challenges that would come. Her decision to stay with Naomi was not just an act of family loyalty, but also a demonstration of faith in the God of Israel and the possibility of a better future. After a long and painful journey, Naomi and her daughter-in-law Ruth finally spotted the familiar hills surrounding Bethlehem. Naomi's heart pounded with a mixture of relief and apprehension. The city, once full of life and hope, now seemed silent and cold in light of the losses she had endured. Bethlehem, known as the House of Bread, was about to become the setting once again for a story of faith, resilience, and renewal. Upon entering the city, Naomi felt the weight of loneliness once more. The streets were bustling with people returning from the harvests, children playing in the plazas, and merchants offering their goods. However, to Naomi, everything seemed different. She had left full with her family, but now returned without Elimelech, Mahlon, and Chilion. The longing and pain were still present, but the hope of a new beginning was beginning to emerge. In the small community of Bethlehem, being a widow meant facing significant challenges. Naomi knew that without a provider, it would be difficult to sustain herself and Ruth. The houses were simple, made of mud bricks and thatched roofs, and job opportunities were limited. However, Naomi was a woman of great determination and faith. She was determined to find a way to survive and provide for herself and her daughter-in-law. With a heavy heart but a determined spirit, Naomi called Ruth for a serious conversation. "My daughter," she began softly, "we have arrived in Bethlehem with hope, but now we need to be practical. The harvests are almost over, and we need to ensure that we have enough to sustain ourselves." Ruth, sensing the urgency in Naomi's words, nodded in understanding. "I will go to the fields to gather grain for us," Ruth declared with determination in her eyes. "You will stay at home and take care of everything here. I will do what I can to ensure that we have what we need to survive." Ruth's decision to help Naomi demonstrated remarkable loyalty and strength of character. She was not only willing to work hard to sustain both of them, but was also ready to face the uncertainties that would come with this choice. Ruth knew that, as a Moabite, her chances of finding sustenance in a foreign land could be scarce, but her faith and love for Naomi drove her to move forward. The next morning, Ruth dressed in simple clothes and prepared to go to the fields. Naomi, though worried, encouraged her daughter-in-law, "Go with faith, Ruth. May God guide and protect you during the day." Ruth set off towards the barley fields, where the workers were already busy with the last harvests. The sun shone brightly, reflecting off the golden grains that covered the land. She knew the work would be hard, but she was determined to return with enough to ensure both of their survival. As Ruth began her work in the fields, she watched the other workers closely. They moved from barley to barley, picking the grains with experienced hands and attentive eyes. Ruth, still learning the secrets of the harvest, worked diligently, taking every opportunity to learn and adapt to the new environment. She also felt watched. In a land where she was a foreigner, Ruth knew she had to be especially careful and respectful. Her determination to help Naomi was clear, and her work ethic began to catch the attention of Boaz, a wealthy and generous man who owned the fields where she was working. Boaz was known for his kindness and generosity towards the workers. Noticing Ruth's dedication, he approached her with a warm smile. "Good morning, young lady. You are doing an excellent job. How can I help you today?" Ruth looked up and replied humbly, "Good morning, Mr. Boaz. I am here to gather grain and support my mother-in-law, Naomi. I thank you for your kindness and for allowing me to work in your fields." Boaz, impressed by Ruth's determination and work ethic, gave her some additional instructions and ensured she had what she needed to work comfortably. This gesture of kindness would be the beginning of a connection that would change the destiny of Naomi and Ruth. As Ruth continued her work in the fields, Naomi watched with gratitude and hope. Her daughter-in-law's determination not only eased her financial worries, but also rekindled the flame of hope in her heart. Perhaps, she thought, there was a greater purpose behind all the adversities they had faced. The weeks that followed showed Ruth's tireless effort. She became increasingly skilled in harvesting, learning to identify the best ears of barley and work more efficiently. Her presence in the fields began to attract attention not only from Boaz but from the entire Bethlehem community, who saw her as an example of loyalty and dedication. Naomi, observing Ruth's growth, reflected on what the future held for them. Uncertainty still lingered, but Ruth's determination gave Naomi a new perspective. She began to believe that, despite the losses and difficulties, there was a possibility of a fresh start and renewal in Bethlehem. Perhaps God has brought us here for a reason, Naomi thought. Ruth's faithfulness might be the key to a better future for both of us. The return to Bethlehem marked the beginning of a new phase in Naomi and Ruth's lives. With Ruth's determination to help her mother-in-law, both faced the uncertainty of the future with courage and hope. The journey that seemed full of challenges began to reveal signs that, through loyalty, humility, and faith, God might be preparing a path of redemption and prosperity for them. Do you feel any similarity between your current moment and the story told? Do you feel you are experiencing something similar? Tell us how you feel. If you need a prayer or help, share a story of overcoming to inspire us and give strength not to give up. Comment if you want to help someone or need help. With their arrival in Bethlehem, Naomi and Ruth faced the harsh reality of restarting their lives. The need for sustenance was immediate, and Ruth, with her heart full of determination, decided to go to the fields to gather grain, a common practice to secure food and some income. However, this decision would not only define Naomi and Ruth's future, but also introduce a crucial figure in their lives, Boaz. That clear and sunny morning, Ruth dressed simply, wearing a cloak to protect herself from the sun and sturdy boots for walking long distances. Naomi accompanied her to the entrance of the fields, holding her hand firmly. "Remember, my daughter, be diligent and careful. May the Lord bless and protect you throughout the day," Naomi advised, with a mix of concern and hope in her eyes. Ruth nodded with a confident smile, despite the uncertainties. She knew that working in the fields would be exhausting, but the promise of sustaining her mother-in-law and herself gave her the strength to face any challenge. With one last look at Naomi, Ruth entered the barley fields, where the golden land stretched to the horizon. Boaz's fields were vast and well-maintained, reflecting the wealth and generosity of the owner. Diligent workers moved from barley to barley, picking ears with skill and coordination. Ruth, still learning the secrets of the harvest, watched closely, absorbing every movement and technique. Boaz, a man of impressive stature and friendly presence, supervised the work with a keen eye. He was known not only for his prosperity but also for his kindness and fairness towards the workers. Noticing Ruth's dedication, Boaz approached her with a warm smile. "Good morning, young lady. I see you are working with great diligence. How can I help you today?" Boaz asked, his voice resonating with kindness. Ruth looked up and responded humbly, "Good morning, Mr. Boaz. I am here to gather grain and support my mother-in-law, Naomi. I thank you for allowing me to work in your fields." Boaz, impressed by Ruth's sincerity and work ethic, gave her some additional instructions and ensured she had what she needed to work comfortably. This gesture of kindness would be the beginning of a connection that would change the destiny of Naomi and Ruth. As Ruth continued her work in the fields, Naomi watched with gratitude and hope. Her daughter-in-law's determination not only eased her financial worries, but also rekindled the flame of hope in her heart. Perhaps, she thought, there was a greater purpose behind all the adversities they had faced. As the seasons passed in Bethlehem, Ruth's determination to sustain Naomi did not go unnoticed. Her hard work in Boaz's fields was constant, and her presence reflected a silent strength that inspired everyone around her. It was in this context that true divine providence began to manifest through Boaz's generosity and protection. Boaz, a man of remarkable integrity and respect in the community, watched Ruth's efforts closely. He knew of the difficulties she and Naomi faced and, moved by a sense of duty and kindness, decided to act. On a clear morning, Boaz approached Ruth as she worked diligently, her skilled hands picking golden ears of barley under the bright sun. "Ruth," Boaz called out with a welcoming smile, "I see how dedicated you are to supporting yourself and your mother-in-law. You are doing excellent work." Ruth, with humility and gratitude, replied, "Thank you, Mr. Boaz. I am only doing what I can to help Naomi." Touched by her sincerity, Boaz made a decision that went beyond mere supervision of work. He wanted to ensure that Ruth and Naomi had enough to live on, demonstrating the true essence of justice and compassion taught in the law of Israel. Recognizing the challenges Ruth faced as a foreigner, Boaz took steps to protect her while she worked. He designated a safe area in the fields where Ruth could gather grain without the risk of being trampled or exploited. Additionally, Boaz provided Ruth with access to food and fresh water, ensuring she would never go hungry while working hard. "Ruth," Boaz said, "do not worry about anything while you are here. I will ensure you have everything you need to work comfortably and safely." Ruth, moved by Boaz's generosity, felt a wave of relief and gratitude. She knew that without Boaz's protection and support, her situation would be much more difficult. This act of kindness not only helped her physically, but also strengthened her faith and hope for a better future. Boaz's concern was not limited to Ruth alone. He was also aware of Naomi's situation and wanted to ensure she had the necessary sustenance. On several occasions, Boaz sent food and supplies to Naomi, ensuring that she and Ruth never went hungry. "Naomi," Boaz said during one of these visits, "I see how you are taking care of Ruth. I want to help ensure that both of you have what you need to live with dignity and comfort." Receiving these provisions, Naomi felt deeply touched by Boaz's generosity. She knew that his kindness was a sign of divine providence, a blessing amidst the difficulties they had faced since arriving in Moab. Boaz's attitude faithfully reflected the values of justice and compassion that were fundamental in the law of Israel. According to the law of family redemption, a close relative of a widow had the responsibility to ensure her well-being and that of her family. Boaz, as a close relative of Elimelech, was fulfilling his duty according to these sacred laws. "Ruth," Boaz explained during one of their conversations, "it is my duty as a close relative of Elimelech to ensure that you and Naomi are well cared for. The law of Israel teaches us to care for those in need, and it is a privilege to help you both." Listening to these words, Ruth understood the depth of Boaz's commitment. He was not acting out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire to help and protect those who were worthy of his compassion. Over time, the relationship between Ruth and Boaz deepened based on mutual respect and trust. Boaz recognized in Ruth not only a diligent worker, but also a woman of exemplary character and unwavering faith. He saw her as a spiritual daughter, someone who had chosen to follow Naomi and embrace the God of Israel. "Ruth," Boaz said on a serene afternoon, "your loyalty and dedication are remarkable. You are a blessing to Naomi and to me. May God continue to bless and guide you." Ruth, with tear-filled eyes of gratitude, replied, "Thank you, Mr. Boaz. It is an honor to serve Naomi and the God of Israel. Your kindness gives me the strength to continue." Boaz's generosity and Ruth's determination began to inspire the entire Bethlehem community. People saw in her an example of perseverance and loyalty, virtues highly valued in that society. Ruth became a respected figure, not only for her hard work but also for her gentle attitude and willingness to help others. Recognizing the importance of Ruth in his life and Naomi's, Boaz decided to take steps to ensure they were well cared for. He made sure that Ruth always had enough to eat and that Naomi could rely on his generosity. This kindness not only sustained Naomi and Ruth, but also established a solid foundation for what was to come. As Naomi watched Ruth work with such dedication, she felt a mixture of gratitude and hope. Ruth is showing the true meaning of loyalty and faith, she thought. Even amidst so much pain and loss, she remains steadfast and committed. Perhaps in some way, God is blessing us through her. Ruth's determination to help Naomi not only alleviated financial worries, but also rekindled the flame of hope in Naomi's heart. She began to believe that, despite the adversities, there was a greater purpose in all their struggles, and that Ruth's faithfulness was a clear sign that God was still present in their lives. Boaz, recognizing the bond between Ruth and Naomi, began to see Ruth not only as a diligent worker, but also as a woman of great integrity and faith. He understood that her presence in the fields was not just about gathering grain, but also about building a future with Naomi. Boaz felt a responsibility to ensure that Ruth and Naomi were well taken care of, in line with the laws and traditions of Israel. One day, Boaz decided to speak to Ruth privately. "Ruth," he began, "you have shown incredible dedication and loyalty. I want to ensure that you and Naomi are always cared for. Would you be willing to marry me, so that you can continue to support each other and your family?" Ruth, surprised yet honored by Boaz's proposal, replied thoughtfully, "Mr. Boaz, I am deeply touched by your kindness and generosity. I have been devoted to Naomi, and I believe that our union would honor the traditions of our people and the blessings of God." Boaz smiled warmly. "Ruth, your faithfulness and hard work have not gone unnoticed. I believe that our marriage would bring continued blessings and ensure the prosperity of our families." Ruth accepted Boaz's proposal, and they began the process of formalizing their union according to the laws of Israel. Their marriage was celebrated by the entire Bethlehem community, who saw it as a union blessed by God and a testament to their shared faith and dedication. Ruth's story was about to reach a moment of profound and blessed transformation. After weeks of hard work in Boaz's fields and under his generous protection, Naomi realized that the time to seek a definitive solution for her family's security was approaching. With courage and wisdom, Naomi decided it was time to follow the traditions of family redemption, a deeply rooted custom in Israel's culture that ensures the continuity of the family lineage and the protection of the vulnerable. On the morning of a clear and promising day, Naomi called Ruth for an intimate and serious conversation. They sat under the shade of an olive tree, the gentle breeze caressing their faces as the sun shone above. Naomi, with eyes full of determination and maternal love, began to speak. "Ruth, my daughter," she began, her voice firm yet gentle, "we arrived in Bethlehem with heavy hearts and faced many losses. But God, in His infinite wisdom, has brought us here for a greater purpose. Now, it is time to seek divine providence to ensure our security and continuity." Ruth, looking at Naomi with admiration and understanding, felt the weight of her mother-in-law's words. She knew this moment was crucial for their future and was ready to follow Naomi's guidance. Naomi explained to Ruth about Boaz's role as a family redeemer. "Boaz is a close relative of Elimelech," she explained, "and according to the law of Israel, he has the responsibility and honor to redeem our family, ensuring that Elimelech's name is not forgotten and that our lineage continues." Ruth listened attentively, understanding the importance of this gesture. She knew that by following the traditions, they were not only ensuring their survival but also honoring the memory of their loved ones. To follow this tradition, Naomi continued, "You will need to express your desire for Boaz to assume this role. It will be an act of courage and faith, but I have full confidence in you." That night, after a day of reflection and prayer, Ruth prepared to approach Boaz. She dressed in her best clothes, simple yet respectful, and took with her a handful of extra barley she had gathered over the weeks. Naomi accompanied her to the entrance of the fields, holding her hand firmly and offering words of encouragement. "Ruth, remember that God is with us," Naomi said softly. "Be brave and confident, just as you always have been." With a nod and a grateful smile, Ruth entered the fields where Boaz was overseeing the workers. She approached him with respect and humility, presenting herself in a dignified and sincere manner. "Good morning, Mr. Boaz," Ruth began, her voice firm yet full of emotion. "I have worked hard to support my mother-in-law Naomi since we arrived in Bethlehem. Now, following the traditions of our land, I would like to ask you to take on the role of redeemer for our family." Boaz, moved by Ruth's sincerity and courage, looked deeply into her eyes. He saw not only her dedication to her work but also the strength of character and unwavering faith she demonstrated. Boaz took a deep breath, feeling the gravity and beauty of the moment. He knew he was facing an opportunity to fulfill his responsibility and demonstrate the true justice and compassion he valued so much. "Ruth," Boaz replied with a warm smile, "you have shown exemplary dedication and unwavering loyalty. It is clear that God has blessed your journey, and I am honored to accept this role of redeemer for you and Naomi." He gently placed his hand on Ruth's shoulder, conveying comfort and assurance. "Let us address the necessary legal matters and formalize this union, ensuring that your family is protected and that Elimelech's name lives on." The news of Ruth and Boaz's commitment quickly spread through Bethlehem, bringing joy and celebration to the small community. Friends, neighbors, and family gathered to witness the union, recognizing the beauty and importance of this act of faith and love. On the morning of the wedding, the city of Bethlehem was vibrant with colors and sounds of celebration. people decorated houses and streets with flowers and colorful fabrics, symbolizing the hope and renewal that this union brought. Naomi, though still carrying the memories of her losses, smiled with pride and gratitude as she watched Ruth find happiness and security. Ruth and Boaz exchanged vows of love and commitment before God and the community, officially uniting their lives. The ceremony was simple but filled with meaning and emotion, reflecting the depth of their faith and the kindness of their actions. After the wedding, Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz gathered for a special blessing. Naomi, with tears of joy in her eyes, thanked God for guiding their steps and blessing her family in such a wonderful way. "May the Lord continue to bless this union," Naomi said, "and may Ruth and Boaz always be guided by his protective hand. May the loyalty and kindness you have shown be rewarded with a life full of love, prosperity, and peace." Boaz and Ruth held hands, feeling the divine presence and the promise of a bright future. The community celebrated with them, singing and dancing, sharing the joy of this special moment. As the celebration continued, Naomi reflected on the journey that had brought them there. She thought about the losses and difficulties, but also about Ruth's loyalty and Boaz's generosity. Naomi recognized that, despite the adversities, loyalty and faith have the power to transform lives and open paths to redemption and renewal. God truly honors loyalty and humility, Naomi thought, and through Ruth and Boaz, we have seen his providence in action. May this story be remembered for generations as a testament to his goodness and mercy. Ruth's marriage proposal and the subsequent divine blessing marked the culmination of a journey of faith, loyalty, and love. The union of Ruth and Boaz not only ensured the continuation of Elimelech's lineage, but also paved the way for future generations that would have a significant impact on the history of Israel and, eventually, on the genealogy of Jesus Christ. This part of Ruth's story teaches us about the importance of following traditions of faith, being loyal, and trusting in divine providence. Through the actions of Ruth, Naomi, and Boaz, we see how loyalty and kindness can transform lives and bring unexpected blessings, reinforcing the message that even in the most difficult circumstances, God is present to guide and bless those who trust in him. Ruth's story culminates in a glorious conclusion that not only restores Naomi's family lineage, but also connects Ruth directly to the genealogy of David and ultimately, to the lineage of Jesus Christ. This powerful ending highlights how God honors Ruth's faithfulness and humility, fulfilling his redemptive plans in surprising and deeply meaningful ways. After Ruth and Boaz's marriage, life in the small city of Bethlehem flourished with renewed hope. Their union was celebrated by the entire community, who saw in this alliance not only the restoration of a family, but also the manifestation of God's kindness and justice in action. Boaz, with his generosity and integrity, continued to be a pillar of strength and support for Naomi and Ruth, ensuring they lived with dignity and security. The union of Ruth and Boaz resulted in the birth of Obed, a boy who brought immense joy and renewal to Naomi. Obed was not just a son, he was the promise of continuity and hope for Naomi's family. Obed's birth was seen as a divine blessing, a clear sign that God was fulfilling his plans of redemption and restoration. Obed grew up healthy and strong, inheriting the kindness and wisdom of his parents. As he matured, it became evident that he was destined to play a significant role in Israel's history. Obed was recognized as a direct descendant of King David, a lineage that carried with it God's messianic promise. This direct connection between Ruth, a foreign Moabite, and David, the man after God's own heart, exemplifies how God uses individuals from diverse backgrounds to fulfill his divine purposes. Ruth's inclusion in the genealogy of Jesus Christ is one of the most inspiring and significant parts of the biblical story. In Matthew chapter 1, verse 5, Jesus' genealogy mentions Ruth as the mother of Obed, connecting her directly to David's lineage and ultimately, to the promised Messiah. This inclusion is notable for several reasons. Diversity and inclusion. Ruth, a Moabite woman, symbolizes the inclusion of Gentiles in God's promise of salvation. Her story demonstrates that faith and loyalty to God transcend cultural and ethnic boundaries. Faithfulness and humility. Ruth is an extraordinary example of faithfulness and humility. Her decision to follow Naomi and adopt the God of Israel showed unwavering devotion that was rewarded in unexpected and glorious ways. Divine providence. Ruth's story illustrates divine providence in action. Every step she took, from following Naomi to working in Boaz's fields, was guided by God's hand, culminating in her inclusion in the messianic genealogy. Ruth's journey, from a foreigner in Moab to an ancestor of Jesus Christ, is rich with spiritual lessons. She exemplifies how God values loyalty, courage, and faith. Despite her humble origins and the adversities she faced, Ruth was elevated to a position of great importance in the history of salvation. Her life is a testament that, regardless of circumstances, faithfulness to God can transform destinies and open paths to divine accomplishments. Ruth's inclusion in Jesus Christ's genealogy also highlights the theme of redemption that permeates the entire Bible. Just as Boaz acted as a redeemer for Ruth and Naomi, Jesus Christ is the ultimate redeemer who brought salvation to all humanity. Ruth's story serves as a foreshadowing of the redemption that Christ would bring, showing how God works through generations to fulfill his salvation plans. Ruth's trajectory, from a foreigner in Moab to an ancestor of Jesus Christ, is filled with rich spiritual lessons. She exemplifies how God values loyalty, courage, and faith. Despite her humble origins and the adversities she faced, Ruth was elevated to a position of great importance in the history of salvation. Her life is a testament that, regardless of circumstances, faithfulness to God can transform destinies and open paths to divine accomplishments. Ruth's inclusion in Jesus Christ's genealogy also highlights the theme of redemption that permeates the entire Bible. Just as Boaz acted as a redeemer for Ruth and Naomi, Jesus Christ is the ultimate redeemer who brought salvation to all humanity. Ruth's story serves as a foreshadowing of the redemption that Christ would bring, showing how God works through generations to fulfill his salvation plans. Ruth's legacy is enduring and inspiring. She is remembered as a woman of great faith, whose life transformed not only her own family but also the history of Israel and, by extension, God's plan of redemption for humanity. Her example of loyalty and devotion continues to inspire people of all ages and backgrounds to trust in divine providence and remain faithful even in the most challenging circumstances. Ruth's story is a powerful narrative of faith, loyalty, and redemption. Her journey from Moab to Bethlehem, her marriage to Boaz, and her inclusion in Jesus Christ's genealogy illustrate how God honors faithfulness and humility, fulfilling his plans in wonderful and unexpected ways. Ruth, a foreign Moabite, became a pivotal figure in the history of salvation, demonstrating that with God, all things are possible and that every act of faith and kindness contributes to the great mosaic of God's divine plan. Through Ruth's life, we learn that loyalty and humility are virtues that not only transform individual lives, but also have the power to influence generations and impact history in profound and eternal ways. Her story reminds us that, even in the most difficult circumstances, God is present, guiding and blessing those who trust in him. Ruth's journey is more than an ancient narrative, it is an eternal testimony of faith, loyalty, and unwavering divine providence. As we reflect on her story, we are invited to draw deep lessons that resonate in our lives today, regardless of the circumstances we face. Ruth, a foreign Moabite woman, demonstrated unparalleled loyalty to Naomi, her mother-in-law. In a moment of immense pain and uncertainty, she chose to stay by Naomi's side, abandoning her own land and beliefs to embrace a new faith and a new family. This decision reflects the strength of loyalty and humility, virtues that inspire us to support and care for one another, even when facing adversities. Lesson for us: in our own lives, we may encounter situations that require sacrifice and dedication. Ruth's story reminds us of the importance of being faithful and humble, putting others' well-being above our own interests when necessary. Boaz, a man of integrity and generosity, exemplified the values of justice and compassion taught in the law of Israel. His willingness to protect and sustain Ruth and Naomi went beyond legal duty. It was an act of genuine kindness that transformed lives and strengthened the community. Lesson for us: in our daily interactions, we can choose to act with generosity and justice, helping those in need. Boaz teaches us that small acts of kindness can have profound and lasting impacts, creating an environment of support and solidarity. Ruth's story culminates in her inclusion in the genealogy of David and finally, in the lineage of Jesus Christ. This glorious ending illustrates how God works through individual lives to fulfill his greater plans. Ruth's faithfulness and Boaz's generosity were instruments in God's hands to bring redemption and hope for future generations. Lesson for us: even when we do not fully understand God's ways, we can trust that he is always working for good. Ruth's story encourages us to maintain faith and perseverance, knowing that our actions and choices have a greater purpose. Ruth did not only choose to follow Naomi, but also adopted the God of Israel as her own God. Her faith and trust in God were crucial in overcoming difficulties and achieving the final blessing. Naomi, though initially filled with bitterness, found renewal in Ruth's faithfulness and loyalty. Lesson for us: cultivating a solid faith and trusting in divine providence gives us the strength needed to face life's challenges. Ruth's journey inspires us to trust in God, even when the path ahead seems uncertain and difficult. Ruth's inclusion in Jesus Christ's lineage is a powerful reminder that each of us can play a significant role in God's divine plan. Her story inspires us to live with integrity, loyalty, and faith, knowing that our lives have the potential to impact future generations in ways we may not yet imagine. Lesson for us: we live in an interconnected world where our actions can influence and inspire others. Like Ruth, we can be instruments of positive change, contributing to a legacy of love, faith, and redemption. Ruth's story is a powerful reminder that God honors loyalty and humility. Even in moments of loss and despair, He is present, guiding and blessing those who remain steadfast in His will. Ruth, with her determination and devotion, exemplifies how faith and loyalty can transform lives and open paths to unexpected blessings. As we conclude this inspiring story, let us all reflect on Ruth's journey and find in her faith and loyalty a model to follow. May we cultivate relationships based on trust and generosity, act with justice and compassion in our communities, and maintain our unwavering faith even in the darkest hours. Let us remember that, like Ruth, we are part of a greater plan, where every act of kindness and every gesture of loyalty contributes to the grand work of redemption and love that God is accomplishing in the world. May Ruth's story inspire us to live with courage, humility, and faith, always trusting in the divine providence that guides us every step of our lives. Thank you for watching up to here, and don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell to see more content like this and stories of overcoming, motivation, and interesting tales. Until next time.